So in the 1950s, rock and roll was a euphemism for having sex in the back of a car. That's true.
And welcome back to the Wright Stuff with David Grant, Larry Traynor and Duran Duran, Andy Taylor. And it's his autobiography, Wild Boy, out now. Great read. Great read. Still to come this morning, do married couples love each other more than those who just live together? A new survey says you do. What do you say to that? 0207 173 5555. That's the number for your thoughts. At first, though, does rock and roll need sex and drugs, or can squeaky clean, teetotal virgins still cut the musical mustard? Should we be alarmed by the rise of drink and drug-free popular beat combos, or relieved? Hordes of screaming teenage girls welcomed the Jonas Brothers to London this week. If you've never heard of them, they're America's latest pop export. 3 virtuous siblings who don't drink, smoke or take drugs and wear purity rings to show they don't want sex until they're married. That is not what rock is supposed to be about, is it? Wouldn't you rather Amy Winehouse than Katie Melua? Oh, but Amy's not a good role model, Matthew. She never set out to be. She's a singer, a writer, an artist. Keith Richards, Kurt Cobain, Keith Moon, they weren't great role models either, but their music rocked. So, Andy, does rock and roll need sex and drugs, or can it survive without?
Is this my specialist subject?
This is your specialist subject. Your start of
well, evidently, if you look at the evidence, and I mean, sex isn't illegal, rock and roll's not illegal, boozing's not illegal, so it's really only about drugs.
Yeah.
That's the bit that's not accessible to the public in general. There's not a shop where you can go and get your rock and roll stash. It's
the squeaky clean thing is there's almost as much emphasis coming out now on not having sex, not drinking, not smoking. So,
well, you know, I mean, what a waste of the one life you have. I mean, really, come on. And you don't have to put it about, but you perhaps, you know, they need to loosen up. I think a lot of it is the Britney experience. That kind of, and that happens to everybody.
What about the music? What about the music?
What does the music need? What's your favourite song?
Oh dear, too many to list, but nearly all written by people out of their nuts.
Right. So.
In fact,
you know,
all written by people out of their nuts. Apart from I quite like bizarrely Softjan Stevens.
If you did a moral
and he's
audit.
A Christian. But I find his Christian music more difficult to listen to than his more rocky stuff.
I saw Stevie Wonder last night. You know, I mean, it was virtually a religious experience. So no, it doesn't need it, but those who choose to do it don't seem to have any trouble being successful.
Yeah, but I mean, you mentioned Amy Winehouse, and I look at her, and I can't help thinking that she would perform better if she was sober. There seems to come a point, okay, the creation of music, I mean, I'm anti-drug, I'm pretty much anti-alcohol, so I'm one of these boring people who doesn't do any of that stuff.
But you have done in your time.
Well, not the drugs, really.
No, but you've done the booze and the fags.
But I think...
Sex, presumably.
Well, have 3 children, so obviously just 3 times in my life. Well, my son thinks only twice, and I got one. I got 2 out of...
hardly a pillar of virtue, if you don't mind me saying so, Larry.
But okay, the argument that you need to use substances to be creative, I can buy to an extent, but there comes a point, a tipping point, whereby somebody cannot then perform the things they have created because they're so out of it. And I worked with Shane McGowan once, and I watched him, and he was a shambling wreck, and I watched his kind of PR people prop him up, and I thought they're there to get the money from him, and I thought somebody, you know, he says Amy Winehouse, you know,
thing, where they keep wheeling her out. Yep. And wheeling around, it's so obvious. And the thing is, a lot of performers, particularly singers, cannot perform under the influence of anything. Yes. So, you know, there's this great fallacy that everyone gets up on stage out their nuts. That's absolute bull. You know, you go on stage, with the exception of a few, and you know, you go on stage and you're not in control with 20, 30,000 people. You know, and you've got a 2-hour show, complex things, a whole great big audience, you've got light cues and that. Get out of here. It doesn't happen. Singers, they really, really have to be careful. So you see them wheeling Amy out, you know she's struggling, and she is struggling because the physicality of performance is one of the most...
But we require rock stars to kind of sacrifice themselves. We want to see them destroy themselves, and I think that's terrible.
That's the whole point, isn't it? We love our rock stars to live... We live out our self-destruction vicariously through them. Then they're dead and we find someone else who we can watch die. And I think that it's not essential that we watch people die in order for us to appreciate
But what about
their
the
art.
music? The music, because I'm not sure that squeaky clean bands do produce music that can cut the mustard when compared to those...
Can I say, I think that one of the great things about rock music and pop music, because rock is an area of pop, in as much as R&B is an area of pop, it's all called the whole thing pop, okay? It's an equal opportunities employer. There are some people who are going to be squeaky clean, there are some people who are going to be off their heads, there are some people who are going to be very normal and nice, there are some people who are going to be completely dysfunctional, and the creativity comes from within them. It's not, shouldn't be, hopefully, it should be dependent on their talent, not dependent on their substances. It should be dependent on what's inside, not what goes inside. So, Stevie Wonder, is he going to write a better song drunk than sober?
You can take the Beatles.
I don't know.
Love Me Do and I Want to Hold Your Hand versus Strawberry Fields Forever, Day in the Life, Lucy in the Sky of Diamonds. Now, at some point there, we know they'd taken mind-altering drugs and the music changed fairly dramatically. So there has been a part that drugs have played. There's no undoubtedly part that sex has played in rock and roll's origins in the 50s.
Look, in a sense, the whole discussion's hypocritical because everybody knows their favourite artist. Most of them were junkies.
Yeah.
Right? And
but
if you did a moral audit of most of the great songs, and did a moral audit of how they were made, they would not be clean.
That's what I think.
That's a point of view.
Let's throw them to you guys at home.
I've spent so much time in recording studios with everyone under the sun, and trust me.
Listen.
Okay. Rock and roll, does it need sex and drugs, or can it survive without? Let's find out what people are saying.
Let's start with Lisa, and she's on line 1.
Morning, Lisa.
Hello.
Hi there. What do you reckon? Can do squeaky clean acts cut the mustard, as far as you're concerned?
No, not as far as I'm concerned. No.
Why?
They're just so bland. They're just so bland. They don't seem to have anything to say in their music. I've always been drawn to the rock side of music. And
why? Is it because I think David was bang on the money that we live our self-destruction fantasies vicariously through rock stars?
Yeah, I think probably so with me. I mean, I've never felt the need to do that myself. And so possibly, it's lived through the music. Having said that, as a parent, I wouldn't want the band to flaunt it. I don't like it when they flaunt it.
Right. There's different stages of this, and there's the writing the music. I think you're on the money in terms of performing the music. I don't think many bands could perform out of their heads because it's a big deal.
Yeah, so you can't just be out of it in the studio and then suddenly clean on the road.
No.
There is a fallacy about the level of excess, and really, what the experience that the public have about the excess at the moment is through one person who's made one album. Right? It's hardly a career yet, and it's hardly an example to the public.
Okay,
but really...
quick word with our audience if we can. Eric?
Yeah, we've got Alan here who's a drummer in a band, so does rock and roll need sex and
You're
drugs?
a squeaky clean cut drummer.
I think that musicians generally are more
open-minded.
Guys,
at least have the courtesy to listen to our audience, yeah?
Through us, and maybe it means that they live our life for us, so they can experiment for us, kind of thing. So,
who's
like
leading on who? Are we encouraging them to do?
No, I think
to take risks
they're
with
just
their
living
health?
the way they want to live. I don't think Mick Jagger would put himself up to be. He just was what he was, and he done what he feels is what he wants to do.
Cliff Richards had a career even longer than Mick Jagger's.
Yeah, and I think Keith Richards would do what he feels to do. I don't think society forces him to do what he wants to do. He's just doing what he feels
But in terms of a contribution to rock and roll, and Cliff Richard has a career going on through 5 decades...
Cliff Richards is boring, and who wants to listen to Cliff Richards?
Okay. You may think that.
Personally,
you may think that. There are hundreds of thousands, millions of postmenopausal women out there that would rip your throat out if you said that again.
I'd imagine.
Okay. Listen, we've got to go to the break. We've got to go to the break. Time runs on. Thank you.